What's going on, guys, and welcome to episode 542 of #AskGSM, here today for Wednesday, April 17th, 2024. I'm Graham GSM Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well and having a great week so far. If you want to send in a question to the show, you can do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the #AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. Drop a comment on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below on the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. We'll kick it off here with the YouTube questions per usual from Micah Does It. Their first question was, do you think that Tony Khan regrets opening up a secondary wrestling promotion in North America now that they are no longer considered the alternative to WWE anymore? They get more hate these days than they are getting support. Love you, Micah, but that is a ridiculous question. Of course, Tony Khan does not regret opening AEW, and I think a lot of it is perspective too. Yeah, they get more hate, quote-unquote, blowback, criticism, whatever you want to call it, now compared to 4 or 5 years ago, but that doesn't mean, I would say, overwhelmingly they get more hate than support. I mean, AEW is a very faithful fan base of supporters. It's not like their viewership has decreased dramatically. I mean, their viewers and ratings are definitely lower than what they were a few years ago, but not to the point where they're pulling in, for Dynamite anyway, their flagship show, a couple 100,000 viewers a week. And I'm an AEW fan. I love WWE as well. I've always been more of a WWE guy because that's what I grew up on, but AEW is a lot to like about it. I don't think the product is overwhelmingly bad. They have a lot of criticisms and stuff they need to work on. I did say last week, before the footage even aired, that airing that CM Punk, Jack Perry bullshit would be a negative turning point for the company, and I stand by that, but that's not to say the company is in shambles, they're ruined, they can't bounce back from it. It's WCW 2000, like, far from it. It's not a great sign for their future if Tony Khan continues to pull shit like that, but I think overall they're doing just fine. Their pay-per-views continue to kill it. I like the shows on the weekly shows for the most part. There's a lot of stuff they can continue to improve upon. I mean, the same thing with WWE, though. There's still a lot they can improve upon for the future. And I wouldn't say that they're no longer considered an alternative to WWE. They are still absolutely, regardless of what you think of AEW, they are still 1,000% an alternative to WWE. So, regardless of what you might think of the show, you may not like it. And that's totally fine. You don't have to watch AEW. You also don't have to watch WWE. You could really watch whatever you want. Or both, which is even better. But regardless of whether the product is good or bad, I mean, there are a lot of things they're doing similar to WWE, for right or wrong, but it is still very much an alternative to WWE. There's still a lot of people that do not like WWE, don't want to watch WWE, whatever the case might be, and they'll watch AEW instead. That is still very much the case now, as it was even a couple of months ago, years ago, whatever, despite some of their recent questionable decisions on screen and off screen. Micah's second question, with Rhea Ripley having to vacate the Women's World Championship, should they align Dominic Mysterio with Liv Morgan to add more heat to their feud for an eventual Rhea Ripley return? Not a bad idea. I wouldn't do that, though. If they were like a legit item in real life, then I would say go for it. But Liv Morgan, we know, is engaged or in a relationship with Bo Dallas, who's also now back in the company. Not that they can't do that. I mean, we know Dominic and Rhea aren't a real-life item, obviously, but you know, they just work so well together. Could they break up Judgment Day before Rhea Ripley comes back? Yeah, I probably wouldn't do it before she comes back. They can continue to tease tension between Balor and Priest. I could see them going down that route. But adding in Liv Morgan, they could turn Liv Morgan heel, but to put her with Dominic, it's not the same dynamic. I think Dominic works better with Rhea. If you are going to put Dominic with anyone, I would just put him back with Rhea when she comes back. I wouldn't do that. It's not a bad idea to kind of add more heat to their feud for when it comes back, but I feel like the feud at this point, with Rhea previously in storyline injuring Liv, and Liv already legitimately now injuring Rhea Ripley, there's a lot of heat there to go off of, where you don't really need to add Dominic into the mix by having him aligned with Liv Morgan. Rhea Ripley can and could be a babyface. She could absolutely be a babyface by the time she comes back for a heel Liv, and arguably should be, considering how over she already is in that role. But to add Dominic in there, I'm not sure if that's necessary. Your third question, with WWE being on a hot streak and selling out arenas, do you think they can and will get to a point where they are doing stadium shows for Monday Night Raw and SmackDown events? No, I don't think so. Unless it was like a massive, massive show, Like, let's say this was, and they were doing well business-wise even at this point, but a year plus ago, when they did the Raw 30th anniversary show, they did that actually at the Wells Fargo Center, which is where they just did the post-WrestleMania Raw, the pre-WrestleMania SmackDown. I was there for both shows. I was not there for the Raw 30 show. I considered it, but I'm like, it's too long of a drive. It's not necessary. Could they have done that sort of show in a stadium? Maybe. But I wouldn't push it that far. I mean, the weekly shows are great, but there's still a lot of dead crowds for some of these shows. Montreal is a great crowd. They were dead for a majority of what we saw on Monday night. And they're selling out these arenas, but that doesn't ordinarily always translate to hot crowds and whatever. I mean, hot crowd, dead crowd doesn't really matter. If they're selling out the arena, that's great. But there's a big difference, I would say, between selling out like a 12,000 arena, 12,000 person arena, 15,000 person arena, and then like a 30,000 person stadium. And that's a smaller stadium. Maybe a baseball field, potentially, depending on the stadium and what they're fitting inside that building. I wouldn't even go that far. I know WCW did a stadium show for the Nitro. Wasn't that when Goldberg beat Hogan back in the day? So it's not impossible, but on the weekly, no. I think the extent of what they're doing right now, where they're selling out the buildings, and they might not even completely sell out, but at least come close to it, where they sell out the buildings and they increase capacity by removing the stage set, I think that's cool. Doing more of that is awesome. I would not ordinarily run stadium shows on the weekly. I don't think they'll ever get to that point. I don't think they should get to that point. Maybe once in a blue moon for a very special show. If they wanted to do like a pay-per-view on Raw, like if they wanted to do like a Great American Bash. I mean, that's NXT, but like NXT does special editions of NXT, but it's not an NXT PLE. They could do that with Raw maybe, and then do it in a bigger stadium. Maybe that could work, but on the regular, probably not. And then your fourth question was, could Andrade and Zelina Vega rejoining together work now under Triple H as a main event act on WWE TV, and would you be interested in seeing it? Honestly, this is just me. I would much rather see Andrade and Zelina back together than Andrade and Charlotte. Now, I know Andrade and Charlotte is real, like they're a real item in real life, they're married and whatever. I just think Andrade and Zelina have far better chemistry on screen. And I'm not just saying that, they're both like Latino, like it just got to pair the Latino people together. Like, no, not that necessarily. We just know as an on-air act that works. Now, I do think Charlotte and Andrade, this isn't your question, I'm just throwing this in there because you mentioned Andrade and Zelina. I do think Andrade and Charlotte would be better, more beneficial for Charlotte, because when she comes back, she'll probably go right back to doing what she was doing previously, which was not overly exciting from a character standpoint, even as a heel. We've been there, done that a million times. Putting her with Andrade would be something different. We've seen Andrade and Zelina before, but they just work so well together. I always loved their dynamic dating back to NXT. There was a reason it worked there. They even worked on the main roster. The only kind of thing I was kind of hesitant with putting those two back together, even as recently as when Andrade came back in January, was the fact that Zelina's gotten more spotlight as a wrestler on her own in the last year or two. Whereas if she joins up with Andrade again, she might have to take a back seat again. Now, granted, lately she's been a back seat in that LWO angle. She's definitely better in the ring now than she was a few years ago, so I'd be okay with her wrestling more. But it would have to be more even where she's still doing her own thing, but not exclusively a manager for Andrade, if that makes sense. So I would like to see that more than Andrade and Charlotte. I feel like that might help out Andrade. He's on his own right now, doing fine, but he's not exactly lighting the world on fire. His matches are good, but I feel like he works better with a manager, and a manager in Zelina Vega. Like, when they had him with fucking Vicky Guerrero in AEW, God, that was terrible. Like that, they had him with CJ Perry for a little bit, like, okay, I mean, maybe, but I don't know. I feel like Zelina Vega is the key, the missing ingredient in his act that works. Now, as a main event act, no. Maybe 5 years ago, I just feel like that time has passed. I feel like there's so many people on the WWE roster right now, on Raw, on SmackDown, even waiting in the wings in NXT, that could be a more viable main event act than Andrade. I would honestly rather see Santos Escobar in that position than Andrade. Andrade is great. I just feel like Santos, his mic skills are better. He gives off as much of a star vibe to me as Andrade does. He doesn't even really need a mouthpiece. He's got the act and legato. I just like Santos as an overall package, the main event level, more than Andrade. I just feel like the Andrade main event level aspirations kind of went out the window maybe a couple years ago when he left WWE. In AEW, there was a chance, and they kind of fucked that up. I just don't really see that happening. Now, before I forget, I just didn't write down the questions here. I got down, I think, every question from YouTube except for one from Bill Meister. Let me just double check to make sure I got all the questions. Okay, I did. His was the only one I missed in the document, so I'll answer it now before I forget. Do you think the Chad Gable heel turn will now lead to a heel faction with the Creed brothers? I don't know if it definitely will, but I saw a lot of people saying that in recent days, and I hope it does. I know, like, and I'm not, I criticized AEW for a long time saying, oh, not everyone's going to have a faction. I agree with that, but I just feel like this is such a natural fit. Like, there were some of the stables that AEW has done that I haven't been overly in favor of because they just didn't make sense. But Gable and the Creeds, I feel like that's giving Team Angle energy, and that would be fucking sick. So, personally, I would like to see it, and I don't know if they would actually do it, but I feel like that'd be cool, and it would also give the Creeds something to do because they really haven't done a whole lot since coming to Raw. They've been impressive, but even lately, they haven't done a whole lot. So, yeah, I would definitely be down for that. As a heel faction, he could dump Alpha Academy. They could do a couple multi-man matches there. Sami Zayn can, feud with Gable on his own for the Intercontinental Championship. I could see the 6-man tags now. Yeah, I would totally be down for that personally. I'm not sure what else you do with the Creeds because they're a great team. They're just not overly interesting from a character standpoint right now. So pairing them with Chad Gable might help. And they're also a bit bigger than him, like significantly. So that can kind of help with the presentation as well. I would just really love the chemistry there between Gable and the Creeds as a faction personally. So personally, like I said, I'd be down for it. Jordan B. from YouTube, his question was, you and I are only the few people who actually watch WWE Main Event. I was just wondering if someone asked you if there were any good matches on Main Event that were worth their time and what some you would recommend. For me, it would be The Shield versus the Wyatt family on April 8th, 2014. Alberto Del Rio versus Sheamus' Last Man Standing match for the U.S. Championship on July 8th, 2014. The Creed brothers versus Hank Walker and Tank Ledger on February 22nd, 2024. Mustafa Ali versus Ricochet 2 out of 3 Falls match on May 27th, 2020. Shelton Benjamin versus Charlie Dempsey, March 23rd, 2023. Dolph Ziggler versus Tyler Bate, April 13th, 2023. Cedric Alexander versus Carmelo Hayes. Man, you came fucking prepared with these dates. October 13th, 2022. And the JD McDonough versus Apollo Crews trilogy from last year, June 22nd, 2023, June 29th, and July 20th, 2023. Wow. Yeah, I remember, I've seen every single episode of Main Event. I've seen all of these matches. There are absolutely no matches I would recommend from the Main Event catalog, because a lot of them I just don't remember. But I would probably recommend the earlier ones. A lot of the recent ones were fun. I think the 2 out of 3 Falls match between Ricochet and Ali stands out because I don't think I've ever seen a 2 out of 3 Falls match on Main Event before. The Last Man Standing match was unique because, again, they had never done a Last Man Standing match on Main Event before. They haven't done one since. That was back when the show kind of meant something. From 2012 through 2014 was when the show was like somewhat notable. I think all the matches I would recommend were from those first 2 years when they took the show more seriously. And it died down a little bit in late 2013, but they picked back up again in early 2014 when it joined the network. And then it got kicked off the network, and all the matches in the past fucking decade have been exclusive to Hulu. And that's honestly the only real reason why I have Hulu is for Main Event. And some of the other stuff they have on there, but primarily Main Event, just to watch it and review it on time. Because I have that OCD tendency where I can't miss an episode of anything that I'm watching currently. But, I would say, again, like I said, any of the matches from the earlier on era of Main Event, I remember the CM Punk Sheamus main event on Main Event, the first match in that show's history. That was like the first match ever on Main Event. Check that one out from October of 2012. I think that was October 3rd, 2012. I remember Dolph Ziggler and The Miz had a really, really good match. They've had a million matches since then, but their first match ever one-on-one was on Main Event, I think in late 2012. That was a great match. That was around the time Miz was turning babyface. That might have been marked as babyface turn, actually. That I remember Christian and I think the Usos having an amazing match on Main Event with The Shield. I think it was Main Event. It might have been SmackDown. I think it was Main Event, though, in 2013. And like you said, yeah, The Shield and the Wyatt family had a fucking match on Main Event. Main Event! in 2014 as well, right after WrestleMania. I think they must have filmed it before the post-WrestleMania Raw. I would think. I don't know. You said April 8th, and that was right after Mania in 2014. So I don't know. I think that's when it would have been filmed. Or right after Mania, rather. So, yeah, any of those matches that I mentioned would definitely be worth checking out. Chris W. from YouTube, his first question was, he says, "Hi, Graham. Hope you're having a fantastic week and got plenty of sleep from the last week. I have not, I did a little bit, but not completely caught up. I'm still kind of, I don't know if jet lagged is the right word, but I'm still kind of catching up on sleep and everything. I'm still not completely back on track, but thank you for saying that." He says, "Rhea Ripley has just vacated her title on Monday and will be out for a while with an arm injury, leaving a feud with Liv Morgan cooking in the process. While she had a dominant reign, I saw her reign as a paradoxical one." Interesting word. She had adequate feuds, yet most of her title matches didn't really click. She cut promos that were effective but one-dimensional. She is one of the top stars of the company, and yet she didn't always defend her title on a lot of the pay-per-views. So overall, I thought her title reign was fine, but somewhat disappointing due to some of the booking. How do you feel about her title reign, and do you think I make fair points?" No, I think you absolutely make fair points. I didn't really mind Rhea's title reign as much as most people, but I'm not saying most people's opinion on her reign being underwhelming is invalid, because it absolutely is valid. I'm just saying, me personally, I didn't really mind, because she's at a level right now where she's so over, where I don't really mind the fact that even before she got hurt, she didn't really wrestle on Raw all that much. She would wrestle when it mattered, when the championship was on the line. Like, I don't need to see Rhea Ripley versus Maxine Dupree. We got that a couple months ago, and it was one of the worst matches I've seen on that show in years. It was fucking terrible. We don't need that every single week. I think her defending against Ivy Nile on that Day 1 show was really good. The Nia Jax match at Elimination Chamber was very good. Probably Nia's best match ever in the main event of that show in Australia. The Zoe Stark match, I didn't really care too much about. I thought it was well wrestled. The crowd didn't really care, but I thought it was a good match. The Fatal 5-Way at Crown Jewel was fine. The Raquel Rodriguez matches were solid but unspectacular. The Natalya matches, I don't give a shit about Natalya, but the Natalya matches were pretty good. And I liked the Zelina Vega match at Backlash last year in Puerto Rico. So, and obviously when she won the championship in Mania last year and when she defended it at WrestleMania this year as well, were her two best matches as well. So people saying, "Oh, she had no good matches," like, you just have a fucking terrible memory, because she had a lot of good to very good matches that you just refuse to remember, and that's fine. But saying the overall run was underwhelming is totally okay as well. To say that she had no good matches or no memorable matches, I guess if you can't remember, that's the definition of the word unmemorable, I guess, but or forgettable, I suppose. But you're just not thinking hard enough, because she did defend the title enough times. It's not like she had a Roman Reigns-esque run where she defended it once every 3 months. She probably had maybe 8 defenses in total. Not saying every match was a banger, but off the top of my head, I know she faced Zelina Vega at Backlash, Natalya on Night of Champions, where she beat her in like a minute, as she should have, because who gives a shit about Natalya? But she faced Natalya again, I think in early July, on Raw, and they had a really, really good match on Raw. She didn't defend it in August. I thought her and Raquel would have their match on that show. They did not. They faced off a Payback. That was the 4th match. They had a rematch on Raw. That was the 5th match. She won both of those matches, obviously. She had the Fatal 5-Way at Crown Jewel. That was the 6th match. They had her and Zoe at Survivor Series, 7. Ivy Nile. They're going off all of this off of memory, by the way. And I just have a better memory than most. I understand that, but just to prove a point here. Ivy Nile was 8, and that was Day 1. Nia Jax was 9, and that was at Elimination Chamber, and she beat Becky Lynch at WrestleMania. So she had, I think, 10 total televised defenses of that championship. Again, not every match was a banger, but they were good enough to where I would not constitute the run as a failure. She's so over where it doesn't even, to me, even really matter that she doesn't wrestle all the time. The promos are indeed one-dimensional, you're right, and she could be doing a better job with that. And I would say she did alongside Becky towards the end of their feud going into WrestleMania. Some of the material there was really, really good. Becky kind of forced her to step it up on the mic, and I thought they had great chemistry there. So, yeah, I enjoyed the run for what it was. I hate the fact that it had to end via injury, but you do absolutely make good points as far as the reign being underwhelming. She was so dominant, which is also a plus as well, because it's not like she was losing championship contender matches or non-title matches, whatever. Like, she has not lost a match, at least been pinned in a match, in over 2 years, in close to 2 years, which is pretty crazy. So they protected her, and when she comes back, like you said, she has a ready-made feud with Liv Morgan over that championship. If Liv Morgan's champion by then, of course. Chris's second question. One of the things that has secretly frustrated me for a long while is WWE's constant need of bragging about their business and success all the time, taking time away from the show. I understand that it's a business, and for so many years, regardless of who's in charge, they have always made a boatload of money. But after so many years, it took me a couple to make me realize how narcissistic and obnoxious it all really is. Them touting about how many views they did on Twitter or YouTube doesn't interest me, and them constantly bragging about the record-breaking ad revenue and stuff like that earning, knowing it also comes with how many people they fire during the year, rubs me the wrong way. I don't know. Is it narcissism, and have you somewhat felt the same way? No, listen, I totally get that as well. I'm not saying I'm completely in favor of it. They definitely do a lot of it. They toot their own horn a lot, regardless of whether it's the Triple H era, TKO era, Vince era, whatever. They have done that for the past decade plus. I've gotten to a point where I don't really care, because I usually don't watch a lot of the shows live. I just fucking fast forward right past it. I really don't give a shit. It is cool that they should be touting about a lot of it because they have the most successful WrestleMania of all time. They call every WrestleMania the biggest of all time, but if they want to boast about that to me makes sense. It's acceptable because they should be touting their successes. But when they do it as often as they do, that's a problem. I mean, AEW talking about All In being the most successful, highest attended wrestling show of all time in the moment for a couple of weeks makes sense. But they don't talk about every show like, oh, Revolution's our highest attended show in months and all this other sort of stuff. They don't do that. They don't really pay attention so much to that stuff. A lot of that is what press releases are for, putting it out on social media. They just talk about it a lot on their television show. You are absolutely right. One mention in an episode I think is fine, but when you do it multiple times throughout the show, that's when it becomes obnoxious. Is it narcissistic? Absolutely. But they do it so much because they are so successful, and for a long period, they were not. So I can understand why they do that sort of thing. But again, they've done that for the last 15 years. In the time I've been watching WWE, they have always talked about, oh, we have more followers on Twitter than the MLB and NBA and NHL combined, like shit like that. That has been the norm for WWE for at least the last 15 years. So it doesn't really bother me personally because they've done it so often for so long. But it is definitely one thing they can kind of tone back a little bit. And like you said, give that television time to other people. When it's a quick 20-second mention, that doesn't really kill a lot of television time, but it adds up throughout the episode and throughout the week when you do it on Raw, NXT, and SmackDown. And that's time you could be using for a vignette or a character profile or whatever. So that I do agree with. Your next question, what do you think has the potential to be match of the night outside of Danielson versus Ospreay at Dynasty on Sunday? Good question. I think the whole card looks awesome. I'm looking forward to Storm and Thunder Rosa for the Women's World Championship, Julia Hart and Willow also for the TBS Championship, Samoa Joe and Swerve in the main event. I think FTR and the Bucks might be the second best match of the night. I'm trying to think of other matches on that show. Danielson and Ospreay will obviously blow everyone away. It would likely be that match. The 6-man with Copeland and House of Black should be fun. We've seen enough of FTR and the Bucks where it's like, all right, I'm ready to move on. But it's a ladder match. They're going to go all out. I think it'll be a fun match. That's probably the match that'll be the match of the night outside of Danielson versus Ospreay. But I think the whole show should be great if executed properly. The next question from Chris as well. Judging from what I saw online last week, a portion of the IWC is starting to turn on Jade Cargill. While she has her fans, JD from NY made a fair point in that at this stage, she's nothing more than an entrance. He also mentions that she's nothing more than looks, no substance. I do agree with him on that, as I feel she seems to care more about posing and flexing than doing anything of actual substance during a match. I understand in time that she will eventually get better, and yes, the crowd does react to her in a big way. But if she doesn't improve and then continues to brag about it on Twitter about her money, the fans will eventually get tired of the Goldberg-like presentation and push and be sick of the same tired and true that AEW experimented with. What do you think? I agree and I disagree. I think Jade has certainly improved. I'm not going to sit here and tell you she's the best worker in the company. She's better now than she was 3 years ago when she debuted in AEW. We haven't really seen what more she can do in a actual match in WWE. She's had all of 3 fucking matches. 2 of them were tag team matches. The other singles match was like 10 seconds against Chelsea Green last week on Raw. To go off now about people turning on her, she's had 3 fucking matches. It's the same people that are already turning on Cody Rhodes. Oh, the promos are boring. He has nothing to talk about. He won the title a week ago. You got to give the guy more time. You got to give Jade Cargill more time too. To call her nothing more than an entrance and that she's just nothing more than looks is incredibly fucking dumb. I think a lot of what JD from NY says, I really don't agree with a lot of it, and that's one of them. He might make fair points and other stuff, but certainly with that, I completely, wholeheartedly disagree. I'm not going to sit here and say Jade is, again, Thez Perez, fucking Lou Thez in the ring, Lou Thez in the ring or anything like that. But I think she has improved, certainly. She showed in AEW that when she's given more time, she can have good matches, not great matches, but good matches with the right opponents. I feel like we'll soon see that in WWE. The whole point, I thought, with her not being on the WWE roster right away a couple of months ago was that they felt that she wasn't ready. Hopefully she did spend that time at the Performance Center improving and honing her skills to the point where she is ready for an actual match when the time comes. Presenting her in a Goldberg-esque fashion in WWE out of the gate makes perfect sense because AEW did the same thing and it worked. It got her over as a big star over there. Why wouldn't it work in WWE as well? When it comes time for her to have longer matches, hopefully she can hang. And hopefully she can, prove that she's worthy of that spot. People turning on her, it's certainly not enough people. I don't know what I already see people turning on her. Those are the people that'll never be satisfied with anything. She just fucking debuted a week ago. Give it time. Give it time. What is there really to judge off of? She hasn't done anything. Maybe that's your point. She hasn't done anything. Well, she doesn't have to. Why would you have her go on there and have a 20-minute classic? She doesn't need that. All she needs to do now is rack up wins, do the story with Bianca. If she and Bianca have a match and it sucks, and it's 15 minutes long, then yeah, we can have an issue with that and we'll talk about it at that point. Right now, there's really not a lot to talk about. The way they've presented her is perfect. It's exactly how they should be presenting her. And her bragging about money on Twitter and you want to turn on her, good, then turn her heel. She was a great heel in AEW for the entire time she was there. She's only a babyface now, so they could do the team with Bianca and then go on from there to have them face off, feud, whatever. Unless they end up on separate shows in the draft, I guess we'll find out in a week. But good. She does give off the energy like, yeah, I'm that bitch and whatever, I'm better than you, I make a lot of money. Good, because she's a heel. She's a heel at heart. She's proved that in AEW. She hasn't really moved on from that. She's a natural heel. She'll be back to being a heel at some point. So, I don't know. I don't really understand the criticism right now because there's not enough to really go off of. It just fucking started. Ask me again in 2 or 3 months about her development and saying, oh, she's not good or, oh, this is getting boring. To say that now, a lot like with Cody Rhodes, is just way too premature and way too, like you're just jumping to conclusions before there's a chance to even judge what we're seeing on television. No L from Facebook, their first question was, who should win the Raw Women's Championship now that Rhea Ripley is out with an injury? I think you mean the Women's World Championship. That Raw Women's belt is in the fucking garbage, thankfully. I think it should be either Nia Jax or Liv Morgan. Now, I would not have been caught dead saying even 6, 8 months ago, year ago, 2 years ago, whatever, that WWE should put their top title on Nia Jax. She had one run back in 2018, and that was it. She had a few different tag title runs, but beyond that, she was never the main singles women's champion again on Raw or SmackDown. And she shouldn't have been because she sucked. Now, she's been back now for a while. She has improved. I'm not going to say like with Jade where, she's the best worker in the company and all this other sort of shit. No, not necessarily, but at the same time, she's gotten over, she has a reaction. Like they're crowning, it's worth noting they're crowning a new champion before the draft, which means that they want to get the belt on someone so they can then draft them to whatever show they want to do. They're not waiting until Backlash. I think that's interesting. So they want to crown someone that's currently on the Raw roster. I don't know if they're doing a Battle Royal. I don't know if they're doing a tournament. Could they put people from SmackDown in a tournament or a Battle Royal? Sure. Could they put someone from NXT in that tournament or Battle Royal? Sure. I think the answer's right there on Raw, though. You either give the belt to Liv Morgan off the bat, and she holds it until Rhea Ripley comes back, or you put the belt on Nia and then Liv beats Nia. I would probably go with Nia. I know a lot of people won't like that opinion, and it might be a bold prediction, but, she hasn't done a whole lot since the Becky feud ended a month ago. She hasn't really been on TV at all, actually. She cut a promo on Monday's Raw backstage, and that was it. Nia's a good choice, though, I think, because she gets a reaction. She's improved. She can be the top heel that Rhea was in that division. She's not Rhea Ripley, but she doesn't need to have a long run. She can lose the championship to Liv within a couple of months, or if not sooner than that. I think giving the belt to Liv off the bat would be great, but you might want to build to that. Having her just win the championship in a random battle royal might not be as satisfying than if she were to lose first and then win the championship from Nia at the next pay-per-view or the pay-per-view after that or by the June pay-per-view or whatever. So that's probably what I would do. I would say Nia Jax. Give the belt to Nia Jax, but if Liv does win it on Monday, hey, totally fine by me too. It's either one of those two. Raquel's not around right now. I would not put the belt on Becky. I wouldn't be upset if Becky won the championship. You could do the same thing I just said where Becky wins the belt and then loses it to Liv. But at that point, I don't know. I don't need to see the belt on Becky anytime soon. I was glad she lost to WrestleMania. She can win now. She might win now. I could certainly see that happening. I would prefer to see it on someone that we have not seen hold the championship. I mean, Becky hasn't been the main champion on Raw in about 2 years, I get it, but Liv has not been a main champion on any show. I mean, yeah, she was champion later than Becky was, but she never really got a real run out of it. Becky was champion for a long time, and Nia hasn't been champion in 6 years, so I would probably go with one of them. I love Tegan Nox. She's not winning the championship. Zoe, no one gives a fuck about. No one cares about Shayna. Candice, Indy, they're not really over, so no to either one of them. Katana Chance, Kaden Carter, no. Ivy Nile, Maxine Dupree, no. They don't really have a lot of options. Chelsea Green, no. Piper Niven, no. That's a lot of women that you can throw out of the equation off the bat because they're all in teams and none of them are over. So it would have to be Nia or Liv or Becky. Becky I'm not too keen on. Nia might be the safe choice. I would love to see Liv win, though. Next question from Noah as well. They asked, do you think AEW can recover from the CM Punk and Jungle Boy video, or has AEW pulled a finger poke of doom moment for their company? I said a moment ago, or a couple minutes ago, I don't think it's a death sentence for AEW. Is it a negative turning point? Yes. I think that hurts a lot of their goodwill with fans for how dumb that was. I don't care what Tony Khan's response was. You don't justify that shit. It was stupid. I don't think it's a death sentence, though. I don't think it kills the company. I don't think they're WCW 2000. It's not something I would have done, and I do think it was very dumb, and I talked about it at length with Mr. Marceau on WrestleRant Radio last week, but I don't think it's finger poke of doom. It's also too early to say as well. You have to look back on that moment in another 6 months, a year, 2 years. If nothing really changes behind the scenes or in front of the camera, then it doesn't really matter that much. But it could be a major negative turning point for the company, absolutely, if they don't bounce back from it and prove that shit doesn't matter. Because that shit was really, really stupid. But if they don't pull that same sort of shit again for a while, then it might not even end up mattering. So time will tell. Christopher L. from Facebook, his first question was, so Solo Sikoa just turned on Jimmy last week with help from former New Japan Tag Team Champion and newest signee Tama Tonga to ignite a Bloodline Civil War. Well, I think it is a good way to refresh the Bloodline after a rough several months. There is one thing I'm not too keen on just yet, and that's Solo as the leader until Rock comes back. He has the presence of a leader, but not the charisma just yet. I'm absolutely willing to see where this goes, but if Rock isn't around until August, he's going to have to do most of the talking for the group, and talking is not his strong suit. How do you think this will go down, and do you agree with Solo as the leader for now? I do, and I'm not saying you're right, he doesn't have leader qualities. He's proven that so far in his time on the main roster, but he's been so one-dimensional as the henchman for the Bloodline for the last year. And I'm a big Solo fan. I think he's great. But he's been very just interfere, fucking Samoan Spike, blah, 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 hasn't won a match in 6 months. They need to do something more with him, and this is it. It's an opportunity, and hopefully he makes the most of it. He could fail in the role, but I can't even say so far so good. It's been 1 week. But I do think he'll be fine. It's something different, and that's really all that I'm happy about. It's something different for him to do. He's not doing the same shit he's been doing for the past year and a half. He doesn't have to do all the talking, because it looks like Heyman will be with them for the foreseeable future anyway. They could kick him out at some point, but for now, it looks like he's going to be with them. So he can do the talking, and actually him doing more talking is refreshing, because he's been silent for so long. So the more talking he does, the more reps that he gets, the better off he will be. So I'm actually very much in favor of making him the quote-unquote leader of the Bloodline, the new tribal chief, until Rock comes back, or even Jacob Fatu comes in. When Jacob Fatu comes in, maybe he can do the talking, or Tama Tonga, he's also a really good talker. Maybe it can be a shared responsibility among the three of them as opposed to just having solo talk. So I like the direction they're going in, absolutely. His second question, who do you see based on stories backstage to have the biggest ego in the history of pro wrestling? I don't know how you can name anyone other than Hulk Hogan. I mean, Hulk Hogan has got to have the biggest ego in wrestling history with all the times that he wasn't fond of this or that and wouldn't want to put people over, especially in WCW. And there's been a lot of cases of that sort of thing, people like Kevin Nash and stuff, but, probably the NWO as a whole, but definitely Hulk Hogan across WWE, WCW as well, TNA. I don't even honestly know what other name would even come close. There's probably names I'm not even thinking of, but for stars at Hogan's level that had that sort of power, that had the ego that he did/does, it's got to be Hulk Hogan. I don't know how you can go with anyone else in that. I don't even know anyone else to name, honestly, aside from maybe the rest of the NWO. But Hulk Hogan has got to be number one. His third question here, I was going to say number 3. His third question, Motor City Machine Guns are reportedly on their way to AEW, which is great news. I was a huge fan of theirs during TNA in their prime, and their empty arena match against the Young Bucks in 2011 is still one of my favorite matches in company history. Where do you see them starting off, and do you think this might be a way for Scott D'Amore to enter the company? I have no idea. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm thinking you're talking about Scott D'Amore going back to TNA. Because I saw TNA in your question. I'm like, why the fuck would they bring him back so soon after firing him? They would have brought him back already. Maybe. I mean, I think Scott D'Amore should be working with AEW. I think they should assign Ring of Honor to him. Have him be booking the show, be the on-air authority figure. They had on-air authority figures for a while in Ring of Honor, and then they just moved away from it. Like, why even do it then? Like, I don't want to see authority figures on the show, but it was like Stokely Hathaway, Jerry Lynn, Tony Khan. Like, I know he has the power in real life, but it was so fucking random. And he sucked as an on-air character, this Tony Khan, so I don't know. Put Scott D'Amore in that spot, have him legit book the show, handle the show, take that off of Tony Khan's hands. As like a manager for them, it's not really necessary. I don't really know what else Scott D'Amore would do or what else he really has to do with the Motor City Machine Guns. Listen, I said in a tweet, I've said in several tweets actually, I would prefer to see them in WWE. I just feel like we've seen them work with the Bucks enough times and all these other teams in AEW. I don't really care to see them in AEW, to be honest with you, but I mean, it's better than them being in TNA for much longer, and TNA is great, but been there, done that. Finally moving on to a bigger platform is awesome for them, so I'm happy for them in that respect. I just feel like if there was any time for them to go to WWE, it would be now. We don't know if they didn't want to go there, if WWE didn't want them. We have no clue. But I am excited for them in AEW. Where do I see them starting off? Probably in the title picture off the bat. I mean, what else? What other teams did they have that really mean jack shit right now, other than FTR and the Bucks? That's the thing. Like, they would have to probably start off in the title picture. I think the Bucks become the new tag team champions. Enter Motor City Machine Guns. They can be the first challengers. They would have to lose, I would think. I mean, they could take the titles. I wouldn't give a shit because the Bucks as champions do nothing for me personally. But, you know, that's probably where they would first come in. I don't know what else you would really do with them otherwise. Like, I'm trying to think of other teams. I guess they could debut as heels and go after FTR. That's a possibility. But otherwise, I'm not really sure what else you do with them off the bat. Next question of Chris's as well. During WrestleMania weekend, Triple H made a comment on the Pat McAfee show in which he basically said that if wrestlers are not willing to take the WWE grind, they aren't worth being hired. While some people, like myself at first, didn't think much of it, I soon read in between the lines and realized how petty and crass it was, as it was obviously a jab at Will Ospreay, Kazuchika Okada, and Mercedes Moné. Last Wednesday, Ospreay cut a shoot promo on Hunter, and many people got on Ospreay's case for basically defending himself from a petty and stupid comment in an interview from the guy who couldn't lock down deals on him, Okada and Mercedes. Just to be clear, I do have high respect for Triple H, and I think he's done a wonderful job with WWE in turning it around from what Vince and Bruce originally had done with it. It's not been perfect, but it's still extremely enjoyable. Do you think Triple H was in the wrong for that comment? Was Ospreay well within his right to defend himself? And what are your thoughts on Tama Tonga calling AEW a mid-card company when he's nothing more than a tag team and mid-card wrestler himself? I didn't know Tama Tonga made that comment. That's a pretty dumb thing to say. That reads to me as, I mean, maybe he could have gone to AEW, but Tony Khan was probably like, I just have no interest. And I like Tama Tonga, but like, if it wasn't for the bloodline stuff, I don't even really know what else he'd be doing in WWE. The guy's 40, probably missed his window to go in and be successful 5 years ago. I'm glad the WWE brought him in, but if he wasn't being immediately entered into the Bloodline stuff, what would he be? Just another mid-card guy on Raw or SmackDown, NXT? I don't know. So I didn't know he made that comment. That was pretty dumb. As far as the Triple H Will Ospreay stuff, they were both stupid comments. The Will Ospreay thing was dumb. I think the timing of it sucked because it came right after they aired that Punk Perry footage. So you go from kind of taking shots at a WWE guy to another guy taking shots at another WWE guy in the subsequent promo. The timing there was awful. You probably shouldn't have done that. And it's not an isolated incident with AEW. They just do that far too often where they take shots at the other company, again, when it's not really warranted. WWE are not completely unpetty themselves. They are very petty. Vince was very, very petty. Triple H was making comments as far back as 2019 when he called AEW a pissant company 5 years ago when Billy Gunn was at the Hall of Fame. So he's not immune from this either. He's also taking shots and whatnot. Tony Khan can be pretty pathetic on Twitter sometimes. Triple H has said dumb stuff. That was a dumb comment. Why would you, his comment about they don't want the WWE grind, then I don't want you here. Why the fuck would you move to a different country to maybe make less money for more dates? That just business-wise doesn't even make sense. Creatively, I would have loved to have seen Okada and Ospreay and even Sasha back in WWE. But that just wasn't going to work out. I mean, AEW getting them was great. WWE, like I said yesterday, I think needs to do a better job with the free agents. They got Julia. They got Tama Tonga, Jacob Fatu. All are great, and those are great gets. But bringing in, I guess they got CM Punk as well. He didn't really have much of a choice, though. It's not like Punk chose between the two companies. He went to AEW first before he went back to WWE. That's worth noting as well. Julia, I guess there wasn't much interest in AEW's end, and WWE just swooped in and brought her in. And I don't know about Tonga and Fatu, but as far as the comments go, Triple H shouldn't have said it because it just didn't make sense. Ospreay didn't really need to respond. He could have just tweeted that. They were both kind of in the wrong for their comments. I don't really blame Ospreay as much as I would blame Triple H. Ospreay was simply responding to one dumb comment with another, fighting fire with fire, so to speak. That initial comment from Triple H shouldn't have been made in the first place, obviously, and that was part of the problem. So the whole thing was just stupid. It was silly. Companies can take playful shots at each other and have it make sense. When it makes sense, though, his comment, Triple H's response to Pat McAfee, just didn't make sense. It just didn't make sense. It struck me as someone who was upset that 3 free agents they wanted to bring in all went to AEW. And guess what? They're all probably going to be in WWE at some point anyway. Definitely Mercedes. He can make these comments all he wants, and they've done this before. Comments about Punk and people like that, and they all come back anyway, so it doesn't even really matter. At Iwagu91, their first question was, your thoughts on the new camera direction for the WWE in the wake of Kevin Dunn's departure? The production levels for WWE television are probably the best parts of the show, and I've enjoyed Raw and SmackDown on the whole, but the new one-shots and some of the unique angles and stuff that they're doing have infinitely increased my enjoyment of this show, and I'm not the only one. That Sami Zayn entrance might be the greatest entrance in Raw history, and that's not just because it happened 2 days ago. Everything about it, from the way that it was shot, the crowd, everything was beautiful. The circumstance with him being Intercontinental Champion, the whole thing was amazing. So the production levels have been on another level, and it makes me laugh with people, and I'm not saying this was the overwhelming majority, but there were a lot of people that said for a long time, get over the camera angles. And I probably thought that at times too. But some of the camera shots were just fucking terrible. The camera work and the constant jump cuts were nauseating. And some people would say, it hardly affects the show. Get rid of Kevin Dunn. It's not going to make a difference. Well, I completely disagree. And I think a lot of people would as well. If you watched the show in the past couple of months, the difference in the post-Kevin Dunn era has been astounding. Just absolutely astounding. And it really has improved Raw and all the other shows tenfold. And now I hear they might be getting rid of the graphics and the CGI bullshit stuff. Great. Save it for the pay-per-views. Don't do it at all. Doesn't even matter. I think that's awesome. Next question, also from Iwagu91. Your thoughts on Chad Gable turning heel? I wasn't really in favor of it initially just because there was such a great story there to tell him beating Gunther, avenging the loss from a number of months ago, and being beaten up in front of his family and all this other sort of stuff. They pivoted with Sami Zayn being that person to dethrone Gunther instead. it's fine, but they're making the most of the situation by really putting heat on Gable. If he can stay over the same reaction that he got on Monday, that's really the key. He's got to stay over, he's got to win matches and win the championship at some point. That heel turn was amazing. It's not going to matter if he doesn't follow it up by winning the Intercontinental Championship at some point. Sami Zayn doesn't need a long run. He's already been Intercontinental Champion 3 other times or whatever. He doesn't need another 4th run that goes on for a few months. He can lose it at Backlash and it would be perfectly okay. Or at King and Queen of the Ring or whatever it might be. This is a feud that can take them through the summer if they wanted it to. The match on Monday was great. Their interaction in the Gauntlet a few months ago, or last month rather, was great. Gable being a heel is great. Pair him up with the Creeds, have him do his own thing. Doesn't matter. I was a fan of what we got on Monday. Having him just lose and then move on would have been a death sentence for Chad Gable. If he remained babyface and didn't win the championship, that would have been dumb. If he remained babyface and won the belt, then yeah, that would have been great. But they ruined the Gunther story as soon as Sammy beat Gunther at Mania. So now they're pivoting and they're making the most of it, and they got a great feud on their hands. So I'm excited for that. Your third question. Before they did it for the now World Tag Team titles, were you expecting WWE to introduce brand new Tag Team title belt designs for the 2 championships after they finally got split at WrestleMania? I did. Just because a lot of people were talking about them splitting the championships in Mania, and they did indeed do that. I'm thinking there's no way they split the belts and continue on with the Raw SmackDown nonsense. And then you can't not call them the Raw and SmackDown belts if they continue to have the same design. They needed new tag team titles. That's been in the works for a while. I think that was the idea a long time ago. And now we're finally getting new tag team titles. Because they got rid of the Raw and SmackDown women's titles and all that other bullshit a year ago. And now they finally have new tag titles to go along with it. So I like that a lot. I like the World Tag Team Championship design. I would assume the new belts on Friday probably won't be anything super unique, but I assume we get new WWE Tag Team Championships on Friday to match the World Tag Team titles on Monday. So I like that a lot. At noob_n_co TV, their first question was, what are your thoughts on that footage from All In that was shown on Dynamite last week? That footage pretty much proved that CM Punk was right, and AEW continues to embarrass themselves. I mentioned it earlier, but it was pretty embarrassing. I don't think it's going to kill the company per se, but I do think to do that was dumb. Made Tony Khan look like an idiot, even more so than he already did by the, I feared for my life nonsense. And then you see the footage. You don't see all of it because Tony Khan's only his hands are in it. It doesn't look to me like Tony Khan was getting swung at by Punk. It looked like he got shooken up because Punk was yelling at him. Punk shouldn't have done that. He shouldn't have obviously got physically engaged with Perry. But everything Punk said that he did indeed happen. I think the only thing that he said that wasn't entirely accurate was that Jack Perry kind of went up to him. Punk went up to him first. So that was kind of part of the problem. Otherwise, everything that Punk said was accurate. I'm not saying that justifies what he did. There was a difference. I tweeted about that last week and people were like, how is Punk right? No, Punk was right in that everything he described was accurate. Him punching and getting physical, or not punching or choking, whatever. Jack Perry should not have happened. Was it fireable? Not that alone, no. But everything else that Punk was involved in up to that point, and how much of a headache he was with that company in the weeks and months leading up to it, was fireable. But Tony Khan should have stepped in. Punk was right about that. Tony Khan was a moron for not stepping in. He didn't do shit about it. He just sat there when the fight was going on until Punk yelled at him and called him a clown. Your company's a joke. I quit. He ain't wrong about that. He was pretty much spot on with that. So he wasn't justified in getting physical. He was part of the problem as well. But also part of the problem was Jack Perry, and also part of the problem was Tony Khan for not doing shit sooner. And last question for the episode, also from Noob. He says, your thoughts on Jade Cargill and Bianca Belair being a tag team? I get the feeling that it might build a feud between them, so I don't see them as a tag team for that long. No, I completely agree. I think that's exactly the idea that they're going for. I think either soon on SmackDown or at Backlash or whenever they will win those tag team titles from Damage Control, the Kabuki Warriors, whatever. And they're going to be champions for a brief bit and then maybe have a match at SummerSlam. So that's the direction they should go in. I'm looking forward to that. I mentioned earlier we'll see what kind of match Jade can have at that point. But yeah, that's probably the best way to go. Some long-term storytelling there. I don't think you can hold off until Mania next year to do Jade and Bianca. I think you have to do that soon. Not in a month, but probably by SummerSlam. Because I don't know if you can drag out them being friends for an entire year. One of them's got to go heel before then. Heel Bianca would be great, but we know Jade's more of a natural heel herself, so probably that. But yeah, no, I like the team. They can win the tag team titles from a division that doesn't really matter anyway. And they can then soon move on to, whatever they're going to do next with their feud and going one-on-one and whatever else. So, yeah, we'll see what they do from that point forward. So thank you guys for sending in the questions. As always, I appreciate it for another jam-packed edition of #AskGSM. A lot of great questions, as always. If you want to send in a question to the show, you can do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the #AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.gsm.Matthews. Drop a comment on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. Have an awesome one, folks. I'm Graham GSM Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.